Yo, what's shaking? Welcome back to another edition of the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That's Anwar Richardson. We are K&A. Do us a solid. Like this video by hitting that thumbs up button. Subscribe to the channel. We are almost at 14,000. Tell your mama, tell your daddy, tell your friends about us and our channel and how you can watch the best Texas Longhorn content analysis videos on the internet right here on our channel. Today, we're talking about who else? Quinn Ewers getting ready to make his first career road start as a college football player. Anwar, this feels like a topic that we talk about all the time. In fact, when Quinn got hurt, one of the things that I mentioned coming out of that Alabama game was that he would, if he missed the Tech game, which he did, it would set the stage for a really difficult matchup for him to be making his first career road start. This is one of the biggest games of the season. The stakes are high. Playing in Stillwater is never a walk in the park, and yet that's the way this thing breaks. The Longhorns will need Ewers to play well on Saturday, and it's a big test.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's one thing to be thrown in the fire against Alabama, but at least you have the benefit of being at home. It's still huge, like it's still major. To have to go against the number one team in the country. And then you play in Dallas, but it's kind of a neutral field, right? And you got half one side, half the other. So, again, it's not to negate anything he's did, but, but now we go to Stillwater. But we're talking about guys with paddles, guys and ladies with paddles, pounding the board. We're talking about what are the shortest sidelines ever? Like, who designed this thing? I'm sure this is way before me. But what are the shortest sidelines ever? That it's out there. And you talk about a hostile crowd. You talk about a game that's going to start at 2:30 in the afternoon. So there's still plenty of drinking time to be had in the morning. And then going against Mike Gundy, who, you and I have a whole lot of respect for as far as what he's a coach and the things that he accomplished. One losing season, Catch, in the Mike Gundy era. That was his first year. And then ever since then, for the last, 16, 17 years, checks every single box. You know what you're going to get from him. You know what you're going to get from a Mike Gundy team. And so for Quinn, to go on the road against this team, again, it's a huge test. A ranked team as well. A team that's coming off a loss, a tough loss. So yeah, I would definitely say this will definitely be a challenge for him.
Yeah, I think for me, this one's really simple. Oklahoma State's defense isn't good at all, especially defending the pass. So this feels like a game. I haven't looked to see what the prize pick numbers are for Quinn Ewers yet, but anything less than 300 yards, and I got to be thinking about taking the more, because he and the group of weapons that he has should be able to have some success against this Oklahoma State team, especially in a game that I think is going to play a little bit like a racetrack game. I don't think it's playing in the 20s like it did last week against Iowa State. What Ewers will have to do, because he's going to have a lot of success. The one thing Oklahoma State can do defensively is create big plays. They can get to the quarterback. They can basically get you off schedule or turn you over. And it's an area that a lot of focus was on with Ewers early in the preseason when he and Hudson Carter were still battling for the job. One of the concerns of Quinn Ewers was that he would turn the ball over in practice, and he might be a little too aggressive at times in trying to make throws with his arm and not make the smart play. But that hasn't been an issue at all so far, really. He's gotten lucky a couple of times with balls that could have been turnovers, but he hasn't been a turnover machine by any, stretch of the imagination. And when I look at this game, if you tell me going in that Quinn Ewers turns the ball over once, I think Texas wins this game. It's whether or not we're talking about Quinn Ewers turning the ball over with a crooked number, 2, 3, 4, they lose. So it's about a protection. It's about going on the road and being a mature player and not putting your team in a bad position. Something that at home and on a neutral site, Quinn's been really good at so far this season. Nobody could say he's looked like a young player.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree to that. Like when I look at Quinn and what he's been able to do, whether it's the short sample size against Alabama, I've said before multiple times that was enough for me to feel really confident, in him. obviously what he was able to do against Oklahoma and of course in that game, in that blowout game. And then, of course, even last week for me, even though it wasn't something that you would say, oh, that checks the Heisman box, there's still no turnovers. And that ends up being the difference in the game. One quarterback has 2 turnovers. Quinn doesn't have any. That's ball game at that point. So, I think Quinn has been able to check a lot of boxes as far as we're concerned of what he's able to do. But it's interesting now when they go against Oklahoma State, Ketch, Oklahoma State is tied for first in the league in sacks on defense. So they've had 17 sacks that they've been able to create. They're averaging about 2.43 per game. They're third in the conference as far as third down conversions. They're actually third in the conference. In third down conversions, they're actually number 1 on defense as far as getting off the field on third down. So it's weird. So I think it just goes back to that collective yardage thing that you hate for it to be a measuring stick, because if you just go on the yards, you're like, oh, they're giving up yards. And but to your point, it negates all the other things that a defense does. And it's interesting, Ketch, because we were talking out before we recorded this thing. Gundy wasn't throwing shade by any stretch of the imagination. But when asked by local reporters on Monday about facing Quinn, he did say it would be a little bit easier for them than facing a guy, like Duggan in the previous game, because Duggan's more of a dual threat guy. Quinn's more of a pocket passer. He says they really try to protect him up front. So he almost like breathed a little sigh of relief. But again, not disparaging, but just talking about from a matchup standpoint. We'll see if that ends up being true. But I do know from an Oklahoma State defense side, and of course, a Gundy, who again we both respect, he'll definitely have them prepared and definitely have a good game plan.
Yeah, the Oklahoma State defense, not unlike the Texas defense in a lot of respects, right? They're not a very good defense by every single metric that you would judge a defense by. But there are some key stats. You mentioned it. Pressure on the quarterback, the ability to get off the field on third downs, where they really thrive. It's almost as if you took the best parts of the Oklahoma State defense and the best parts of the Texas defense, you'd have one hell of a defense at that point. You'd be checking a lot of boxes. I think Gundy's right. Look, it wasn't an insult to say that playing against a quarterback like Quinn Ewers makes the task a little easier for Oklahoma State on defense. It's not to say that he's not a great player and that he can't harm you in a lot of different ways. His arm talent is so unique that, he can make up for not being a guy that uses his legs. But all we have to do is look at the Texas defense and how aggressive and how different they are when they play against a team with a quarterback that can move around versus someone who's a little bit of a stiff in the pocket. It's not fair to call Quinn Ewers a stiff in the pocket, but Gundy's right. Texas does not design run plays for him. And if he does move around in the pocket, he's moving around to make a throw and not moving around necessarily to take advantage of a defense opening up running lanes for him. I think from a preparation standpoint, it does make it easier because you're never in no man's land, which is where you sometimes find yourself when someone can move around and beat you with his feet. The thing is, Quinn's got an incredible talent with his arm, and he's got incredible talent to work with. And I think that will be, while Oklahoma State won't have to worry about this one particular thing, there's a whole set of doors that open up that they do have to worry about. And I think Gundy knows that. I think Gundy's telling his team, this is the same old Texas that you've always played against. Bunch of highly rated guys that had much higher blue chip ratings than you did. But what do? We just beat them at executing. We beat them at being a good, solid, fundamental football team. But I think you and I both know this actually is a different kettle of fish that Texas is working with right now. I mean, you and I have been doing this for 8 years. At no point that you and I have been doing analysis videos or post-game shows or anything else, have we ever seen a Texas team that has the talent available to it at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and even the tackle positions? And I think one of the real storylines, obviously a lot of this video is mostly focused on Quinn Ewers, but Texas's ability at the tackle positions to protect the edges so that Quinn can throw comfortably from the pocket is one of the big storylines in this game. And Texas just hasn't been this good at both tackle spots combined. There have been years where they've had Connor Williams or Sam Cosmi, but then you look at the other side of the field and you go, uh-oh, you're not doing that this year. And you combine that with the skill talent that Texas has. Again, I expect Quinn Ewers to have a really good statistical game. The question will come down to a couple of plays. Are they turnovers or are they not? I would expect at some point to Oklahoma State be in a position to make a couple of those plays. If they complete them, if they finish them off, it really has a chance to dictate what happens on Saturday. But more times than not, 90% of the plays on Saturday could be Texas finding a lot of success on the offensive side of the ball. And that especially means Quinn Ewers connecting with his receivers.
Yeah, Ketch, it's interesting. And I do have a question, actually a couple questions for you. And I don't want to sidebar this too much or derail it too much, but when I was watching the press conference, Gundy talked about Kelvin Banks and said that, hey, we watch him, luckily he's a guy that's only going to be there for 3 years. But he also mentioned that, he was a guy that was committed to us, for a little while, and Texas came in again. I forgot about that. Can you refresh me a little bit on that whole situation with Banks? I know it's a Quinn video, but you brought up everything. And then can you refresh us on Banks being committed to Oklahoma State, now going against the team that he once was committed to, and of course, how that affects Quinn?
Well, early in his junior season, I can't remember the exact timeline of the dates involved, but right about the time that Banks started to get some national offers. At the time he committed to Oklahoma State, he was a regional prospect. So Texas had offered, Texas A&M had offered. The main schools that recruit the state of Texas and are usually the first schools to offer kids had kind of made their offers. Credit to Oklahoma State, they were able to get in with Kelvin Banks early. And when he made that commitment, he didn't do it as a guy thinking that this was a placeholder situation. He was pretty loyal to Oklahoma State early on, and I think he really thought, I'm happy here. This is, I think that fit the level of expectations that he had for himself. It's hard for some of these guys to imagine that they can pick their spot anywhere in the world to go play college football, that they want to go to Alabama, they can go to Alabama or Oregon or Clemson or Georgia or whomever. There got to be a point when Banks was committed to Oklahoma State when the realization of I've got better options truly kicked in. And at that point, he opened up his commitment. Oklahoma State was never going to sign Kelvin Banks. I've done this a long time, and the moment he committed, I think all of us that follow recruiting felt like, well, that won't last. And it didn't. Oklahoma State really doesn't have the capacity to hold on to a guy like Kelvin Banks when all of the wolves are huffing and puffing and trying to knock your house down. But, it was a great early evaluation from Oklahoma State. They did a good job of getting him on campus. But ultimately, and it wasn't just a Texas thing. Like, he made it sound like Texas came in and took his cornbread. What really happened was a different level of options took his cornbread. Mm-hmm. If it had just been Texas and Texas A&M, two schools that ultimately kind of came down to, maybe it would have looked a little bit different, but I doubt it. But the fact that he became a true national prospect and a guy that at the time was being viewed by everybody as a 5-star, even if Rivals ends up ranking him as a high 4-star in the end, once it sunk in, oh my God, I can go anywhere. And some of the top head coaches in the country, guys that you would ask autographs from, start calling you and wooing you, things just change. And that's kind of what happened. I think Gundy was wrong to kind of single out Texas as the thing that changed the recruitment of Banks. Texas was part of it, and they won in the end. But this really just came down to principles of a highly rated recruit just being a little too big for Oklahoma State, with all due respect to a Cowboys program that you and I have a lot of respect for.
So does that just one of those things when you say, when Gundy says it just that chip on the shoulder that Oklahoma maybe faces, and some kind of, you talked to them earlier, like they all get these recruits, this and that. Do you think that's just the same tip on the shoulder, like, that's just Texas, and this is another reason why we hate them? Do you think that's what it's about?
100%. I think they've got their rallying cry down. He has the speech. He has the way he's going to set this game up. He has the way he's going to remind his players how they perform in matchups like this. He's going to tell them, hey, which of these two programs that will play in Stillwater this weekend, who played for the championship last year? Who's more recently won a Big 12 championship? Who has, assuming Spencer Sanders plays on Saturday at quarterback, who has the senior at quarterback and who has the freshman? I just think that he will have his guys in the right frame of mind, and it puts a big onus on Texas to show up and be ready to play on the road at a level that they haven't played at on the road in really quite a while.
Okay, so here's my question to you, Ketch. So if you're Gundy and you're going against a guy like Quinn, and he's already talked about, hey, he's more of a pocket passer, you don't have to worry about his legs, what's the strategy? Are you rushing three and you dropping a bunch in the coverage to try to see, can he find something open, or are you really just putting pressure on him all day long? Like, I know you'll mix the two potentially, but what do you think the overwhelming strategy Oklahoma State uses to go against Quinn Ewers?
I think you're mixing up everything that you do, right? So you're playing some zone, you're playing some man. I think you're switching them up. I think you're trying to confuse Quinn Ewers a little bit with what his eyes are seeing versus what is actually going to happen. But I think if you're Oklahoma State, the one thing that you want to try to do more than anything else is make Quinn Ewers uncomfortable. And it's a big challenge because in the past, in every year that you and I've done this, getting pressure on the Texas quarterback and making them uncomfortable has kind of been an easy thing to do. That hasn't really been the case so far this year. And to the point of this conversation, and to the credit of the Texas offensive line, we've not seen Quinn Ewers stressed in a game yet. Alabama in a quarter, up until the moment where they injured him, hadn't been able to really get pressure on him. And in the games, Oklahoma wasn't able to do it. Last week, Iowa State, who has a really good defense and really good edge and end players, they weren't able to do it. Oklahoma State will, I think, run stunts with their defensive linemen. I think they'll bring extra men from pressure situations. I think on third downs. I'm curious. I don't watch Oklahoma State so closely that I know the answer to this question, but I wonder what the key to their third down success is. Is it pressure? Is it bringing pressure, or is it playing off a little bit? Maybe that's something that you and I can just dig into over the course of the rest of the week. But
sure.
I would guess if it was me, right, if Oklahoma State contacted me and said, Ketch, help us out here. Here's money. I don't know what would motivate me to help out Oklahoma State. But if they were like, here's $1 million, and I'm going to tell you what I'm not even going to charge them. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm bringing pressure up the middle. Yeah. I'm trying to challenge guard, center, guard. So this is a Jake Majors game. This is a Hayden Connor game. And this is obviously a Cole Hudson game. And I think it's harder to get pressure up the middle, which is the way Texas has been able to do it on defense this year. Usually most of your pressure comes from the outside. I think the key potentially to getting Quinn Ewers thrown off a little bit is pressure in his face, confusing the Texas offensive line with stunts and where the pressure is coming from. And if you can get pressure in his face, can you get him to make dangerous throws? And if he tries to make a dangerous throw, can you punish Quinn Ewers for trusting his arm a little too much? Nobody's done that so far this season against Quinn Ewers. But if you're Oklahoma State and they were advising me on the best way to try to do that, I think that's the way you approach this game.
By the way, do they give you that money like as a transfer into your account? Is that cash? Like how do you take that $1 million so it doesn't get traced back to you?
I would ask Oklahoma State to just transfer it into my Prize Picks account. So that I can just gamble it all away.
They just cash out at some point.
I'm just making the same bets that I'm already making every single week with just a little bit more juice on the back end of them. Yeah. Instead of my 5-pick my 5-pick transactions where I'm trying to win 10 times the money, now I'm making 10 times the size of the bet. I'm turning into Charles Barkley, essentially.
I think that what helps Quinn in this game, Ketch, and that's really, by the way, hilarious. But I think what helps him a lot in this game is that a little bit of what we saw this past week versus Iowa State, which is, look, man, you don't have to go out and win this game for us. We've got Bijan here. We've got Roshan here. We got Jatavian Sanders, as your kind of, safety valve here but better than your average safety valve. He's even Gundy talked about, he's not really a traditional receiver because they also line him up not a traditional tight end because they line him up as receiver. So you've got other guys, you've got other weapons. It's not like you got to go and be the guy that throws for 300 or this team is going to lose. You don't have to go for 320, 4 touchdowns, and for this team to win. If you just play a game that's kind of error-free, limit the turnovers as much as possible, move the ball down the field, convert on third downs. But again, Ketch, we looked at that final drive that Texas had when they scored against Iowa State. It wasn't about passing. They needed that pass at the end. They absolutely needed him to connect to Xavier Worthy. But everything else predominantly on that final drive was a run play with the exception of maybe 2 pass plays. So you've got the formula there. If things get tough and times get tough, hey, don't worry about it. This is what Bijan's here for. This is what having a first-round running back is here for. We've got this for you. And then you got to hope that maybe, with them committing to stopping Bijan, which everyone's always going to try to do, maybe that helps you with a little bit play action. But also, you've seen Bijan as a receiver. And so that also adds a little bit of different dimension and throw teams off their toes, knowing that, hey, Bijan's going to get out there and get loose and things to that effect. So I do think that they've got the good part about Sark is that he's got some options. Now you just got to hope, for that your young quarterback handles that road environment, right? Because we saw last year, Arkansas, and then listen, I think when we talk about quarterbacks, I think, and not to be disrespectful to Hudson Card, Quinn Ewers is a better quarterback. And I'll just say it like that and be gentle at that. But, we saw what happened with Arkansas, right? And we saw what happened there. We saw what Casey Thompson did in his first true road game against TCU, right? And that was a struggle for him as well. Again, we're talking about Quinn being better than those guys. So it's not a comparison of their skill set versus his skill set, but it was the entire team. The entire team outside of the quarterback had troubles. It wasn't, the Hudson Card thing happened against Arkansas, but that's because that offensive line got exposed. And that was a problematic. That, the TCU thing, there was an injury, but there was also some other issues. There was the entire team. Yeah. They respond. And so, again, it's not to shit on Quinn or anything like that. Everybody knows I stand for Quinn, right? That's my dude. But also realize that, hey, there's going to be a lot of variables of other guys, who are going to be affected. The other guys are going to have pressure. Other guys are going to feel it. The same pressure that outside of the quarterback that was felt this year against Texas Tech. In that hostile environment, right? And what that entailed. And there was a lot of other things that happened because it was hostile. So, this will definitely be a test for, everybody, not just Quinn, but the entire team.
When it looked like ultimately they lost to Texas Tech. But when it looked like they weren't going to go to overtime, I don't think that's a game where Hudson Card was going to get the blame for that loss. I mean, he wasn't great, but he wasn't putting the team in terrible positions, and they weren't in a position to lose that game because the quarterback position was awful. I think you made a couple of really great points, not good points, but great points in that last little stretch. Working my way backwards, I think you're right. If Quinn makes a couple of mistakes on Saturday, it might not just be that Quinn Ewers, as a quarterback, threw some bad balls. It might be a cause and effect situation, like you mentioned, where maybe it starts with Cole Hudson doesn't read a stunt and the pressure comes up into Quinn Ewers' face where he can't quite see the field. He ends up being the guy punished. But if Texas loses on Saturday, I don't think it will be a Quinn Ewers issue. I think it will be a full team issue. And I think you're right. Even going back to the Arkansas game last year, where obviously Hudson Card took a lot of heat for that, the whole team was piss poor. I mean, a year removed from it, Sarkisian's pretty honest about what happened on that day in ways that he wasn't able to be in the immediate aftermath of it all. The other thing that I think may have been your best point of the entire video, Quinn doesn't have to win this game by himself. In a year from now, when he's in his second year as a starter, they're going to call on Quinn to be the guy that leads the charge. He has players around him, and Bijan is certainly probably the biggest, that they can lean on to be the guys that carry at least equal weight, if not more weight. So just like on Saturday against Iowa State, where he almost throws 3 touchdowns on accident, right? Like he can throw 3 touchdowns in a game and not play especially well. I think that's what you want from Quinn this weekend. You want him to play better, and I think he will. He's playing against a defense that's more easier to be had, but you don't need him to make dangerous throws, because if they're not made, who's going to make the play? They've got guys. They got guys that are going to make the plays. So Quinn, take care of the football. The Quinn Ewers version of bus driving is really good, right? Mm-hmm. If I say Quinn Ewers, just be a really good bus driver this Saturday, there's a lot of – he could be like the Mario Andretti of bus drivers. As long as he drives the bus and doesn't wreck it, I think Texas is in great shape on Saturday. Along the way of just making sure you take care of the football, he will make plays. He's too talented. He's got too much around him that can help him. You know, I think you nailed it. This is a game where if Quinn Ewers plays a controlled game of football, I really think Texas comes out of it with a W on Saturday. In a game where the margins will be thin, and the turnover battle may very well decide who wins this thing. Give your defense a chance to be the one that makes those plays, and do everything you can to not put stress on everybody else around you by making the big mistake. And he's been able to avoid that so far this season, and I think it really is the key to victory on Saturday. Look, do us a solid. Leave your comments in the comments section. How many yards do you think Quinn Ewers throws for on Saturday? His career high at this point is 289. I think Saturday is the first day that Quinn Ewers breaks 300 yards. I want to see your stat predictions in the comment section below. Like the video. Hit that thumbs up button right now. I think Anwar and I had a good, healthy quarterback conversation. And we even talked about Kelvin Banks. I'm begging now. Give me your like, subscribe to the channel. Get notifications, and by all means, get ready for more content the rest of the week. If depending on when you're watching this video, I'll be going live on Tuesday night, Drunk Uncle tomorrow night on Wednesday, the Modcast on Thursday, predictions and the post-game show and the hype videos. I think we've got an Arch Manning video on the way. Lots of stuff all week long here on the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel. But for now, for K&A, we bid you farewell. You guys be good to each other. Later.